I want to talk about lead. If you didn't know, in the 1920s, we started putting lead into gasoline. And cars, they were just spewing lead into the atmosphere, and everyone, literally everyone on the entire planet to a certain degree, was breathing in lead. This is obviously a huge issue because lead causes brain damage, not a small amount of brain damage. It causes a significant amount of brain damage, specifically in ways that can increase aggression and that can decrease the amount of empathy that you have. It also just impairs cognitive function, just in general. The air that we breathe didn't become lead-free until the 90s. In fact, from the years 1992 to 2002, you can see in this chart I've got right here, there's a 56% drop in crime, which is correlated to the drop in lead in the air. Think about that for a second, because these crime statistics, specifically this is talking about violent crime, but crime statistics are easy to measure, and lead doesn't just increase the degree as to which people commit crimes, it also has effects that are more difficult to measure. So how would you measure the effects that it have on empathy? That would be a lot more difficult. There are ways that you could feasibly do that, but it would be difficult. It would also be difficult to measure how much it increased aggression, what effects it had on people's political ideologies, how susceptible people are to manipulation. I contend that the lead poisoning that happened on the entire planet is far more significant than most people would note, especially due to the fact that, if your entire generation and maybe the one before you and maybe the one after you are all brain damaged, that's very emotional. A lot of people aren't going to want to think about that. They're not going to want to address it. So there is a degree of denial that will happen, massive amounts of bias, which might be increased because they have brain damage. For example, millennials are the first generation who are not becoming more conservative as they age. This might be because they're also the first generation alive who does not have increased levels of aggression and reduced levels of empathy due to lead poisoning. One of the strange issues that is arising is with all of these outdated ideas, there is a relatively new phenomenon that I can only call misplaced empathy. The older generations, they have these strong cultural and societal beliefs that are completely outdated. They stem from a culture built on increased levels of aggression and decreased levels of empathy. And these younger generations who have essentially, compared to the older ones, they just have empathy on steroids. They will end up having toxic ideas, not because they actually want to have them, not because they're beneficial to them, not because they make sense to them, but because they are just empathizing with the people who taught them. The people who taught them these outdated ideas, they're panicking, they're freaking out about the changes that are happening right now. The changes primarily being that we are becoming more empathetic towards others. So just imagine a bunch of boomers who are really upset. They feel like their culture is being destroyed. And then there's a bunch of young people who have boosted empathy. And, these boomers are oftentimes people that they care about, their parents or whatever. And so just out of empathy alone, they're going to try to sustain toxic ideas. But you'll notice that it's just a little bit off. It's as if they don't actually believe them, or when they come face to face with an actual person, that they're like, it's totally different than when they're alone, talking to people on the internet, voting. All of that's going to change and go away. There's just so many people who are just on the brink of a massive ideological shift. There just needs to be a little bit of a catalyst, or a few more people need to die, and there's going to be just an exponential chain reaction of events, of changes that start to get made. Another thing that could be boosting empathy is the internet. The internet, it basically just gives us access to so many different ideologies. We can talk to people from other nations. We are starting to learn just how much humans are a byproduct of their environment. And so if someone's environment is able to access the entire planet easily, then they're going to have more empathy towards it. Also, the internet just gives us incredible and unprecedented levels of access to information. So that combined with the lack of brain damage, the younger generations, that they just understand everything better. In a post-lead society, we're going to start to see far more social programs being enacted. We're going to see people care less and less about greed-based competition. We're not going to want to reward those types of behaviors anymore. We're going to see massive economic changes. The post-lead society is going to be far more creative. Creativity is going to be, creativity is already valued right now, but in the future, it's going to be like the primary thing that is valued over everything else. We're just going to want to create a society that is basically like a heavenly artistic utopia where people don't really need to worry about material desires. Everyone's needs will be met. Right here, I wrote a little bit about mental illness, new forms of anxiety, and social disorders that are showing up far more prevalent in the younger generations. It seems like a new phenomenon. I would like to propose that this is all nonsense. This is all a complete misunderstanding. The people who have social disorders, people who have mental illness, are the generations that are affected by lead. The younger generations, because a lot of these people, they'll go to their therapist and they'll talk about how overwhelmed they are by a system fraught with negativity, hatred, greed, and aggression, because that is what we're living in. We're living right now in like this capitalistic hell. Pathetic, humiliating zero-sum game. And they will claim that like, oh, that's the issues of my problem. That's what's causing it. And the people in the older generations, they're just like, oh, well, that's the way that it is. I was able to handle it. Of course you were able to handle it. You aspect of your consciousness that deals with empathy is damaged. These systems are not designed for natural humans. They are designed for lead-brained humans. Speaking of natural humans, you will hear so often these arguments that humans are naturally tribal, that we are naturally hateful, naturally distrustful of other people who look or who are different than us. These days, obviously, we're learning that none of this is actually in our blood. That's nonsense. These aspects are just completely byproducts of our environment. But all of these naturalist arguments about the nature of humans, it's all being built by the least natural humans throughout all of human history. Psychology, history, science, biology, economics. Our textbooks have been written by people who can't know what natural humans look like. They literally can't know what natural humans look like, because every single human who is alive before millennials is, again, they are the least natural humans who have ever lived. Any idea that humans are naturally violent, that humans are naturally tribal, that having empathy towards someone who looks different than you is an unnatural trait, that's all nonsense. We're going to have to rewrite our psychology textbooks. We're going to have to rewrite everything that has to do with what it means to be a natural human, because, again, it was all written by the most unnatural human cognition that has ever existed throughout all of human history. I need to address the negativity in this video, because this is an extremely negative video. It is portraying the three generations that are currently alive before millennials in just a terrible light. But there's not really anything that we can do about that, because that things are terrible, and it is like overwhelmingly it's their fault. So I believe the attitude that we have to have is it's kind of the same that a doctor has to have with a patient that has cancer. It's like, oh, well, do I have to tell them that he has cancer? It's going to hurt his feelings and ruin his life. He's going to be so upset if I tell him. I'm just not going to talk about it. We have to have the attitude of professionalism, but also we can't be holding back. Like, we have to be able to talk in detail about the massive amount of brain damage that was caused to all of the generations, because it is probably the most significant contributing factor to literally all of our problems today. I don't really want this to be negative. I don't want to output this negativity. But the best part is that raising awareness of this doesn't mean that there has to be any attack on any generations. There doesn't have to be any hatred. There just has to be a level of understanding. We can treat it as a medical issue with empathy, because it is technically a medical issue. I would also like to make it clear that despite the massive increase in aggression and the significant decrease in empathy, there was still tons of love throughout these older generations. Things have still somehow managed to hold themselves together. I do think that we have been, at least for the most part, throughout the time that there was, 1920s to the 80s, we've been moving in the right direction. So if anything, that's just going to be a testament to how great things are going to continue to be now that the most significant contributing factor to all negativity is gone. This is supposed to be a hopium video, not a doomer video. So, and there is a lot to hope for because of the post-lead society that we're going to create. So I'm going to try to end this video on a positive note, because this has been a very negative video. The solution to these issues is not to attack anyone. It's to raise awareness and to treat it as a medical issue, and to just use the empathy advantage that us and the younger generations have over the older. Join the cult.